Before we get to the news, Amber and I wanted to announce that we'll be doing a Canada Day special on July 1st, and we would love for you, our listeners, to be a part of it. All you have to do is go to speakpipe.com/the AmberMac Show and leave us a short voice message about what makes you most proud when you think about Canadian tech. We'll be using some of these on our Canada Day special, and we can't wait to hear what you have to say. So head on over to speakpipe.com/the AmberMac Show to share your thoughts.
I am super excited to hear what people have to say about what makes them most proud when it comes to Canadian tech, because that is a long list of innovations that
It sure
sometimes
is.
they don't get as much attention as they should get, Jeff. Is that a fair comment?
I think so. And I hopefully will be bringing some more attention to them right through the show.
All right. Well, this is something I would never have expected when it comes to tech. We've talked about OpenAI making deals with lots of different kinds of companies, but it looks like they have just inked their very first deal with a toy maker.
It's true. So Mattel, the makers of Barbie, Masters of the Universe, and countless other familiar toys, is teaming up with OpenAI to begin to leverage generative AI in its business. Now, it's not totally clear what this arrangement entails, but it'll almost certainly include things like new toy designs, as well as help with Mattel's increasing forays into movies and gaming.
Wow. Yeah, I was reading a little bit about this, and just like you said, it's kind of unclear exactly how this partnership is going to roll out, and where we're going to see examples of OpenAI and Mattel working together on the Barbie front. But I just imagine these really AI-driven robots in the likeness of Barbie, and then things go wrong quickly.
We could get some very terrifying things, and Mattel certainly has a lot of interesting IP that they can leverage for this. And Mattel is keeping total control of their own IP. They're not giving OpenAI any rights to that. But yeah, it'll be an interesting partnership to see what comes out of that. Maybe some truly horrifying toys.
All right. Well, speaking of AI and entertainment, we have covered Reddit suing Anthropic on last week's show, but now Hollywood is getting in on the attack on AI companies, with Disney and Universal having just launched a copyright lawsuit against the AI imaging startup Midjourney. This is huge news.
It is, and it was really just a matter of time when you consider how often you see copyrighted characters in AI imagery. I mean, from Homer Simpson, Shrek, Darth Vader, there's no end to it. And to quote Disney and Universal, Midjourney is the quintessential copyright-free rider and a bottomless pit of plagiarism, end quote. So tell us what you really think. Hey, that's a pretty intense. Now, these things will take a while to sort out, as they often do, but I'm hopeful we'll ultimately be able to start reining in some of these really obvious abuses that are being engaged in with the AI companies.
Jeff, I think this is what it's going to take. Some of these big companies who are going after some of the AI gen makers, if I can call them that, because obviously the small artist isn't going to be able to do just that. Would you agree with that comment?
Yeah, absolutely. And, these guys are, you can get pretty close to eating one another's breakfasts here when you get the big boys slugging it out like this. So I think they're not going to pay attention unless it's somebody big. So again, you see Reddit from last week, and then, Disney Universal is probably to be feared. So I think this could actually lead to some meaningful change, which would be wonderful.
Well, another pushback against artificial intelligence. Wikipedia recently began testing AI summaries in some articles. AI summaries, you see this now when you do a Google search. It appears at the top of your search. We're seeing these more and more. The reaction from Wikipedia editors was pretty swift and not all that positive.
No, and I mean, I think of Wikipedia as one of the few really core websites online. I've said in the past that it didn't make as much sense for me to have Wikipedia as my primary search page as it would Google, as I find Wikipedia to be more reliable a lot of the time. And it turns out that the many human editors that make Wikipedia reliable had some major issues with this move, pointing out the potential brand damage that could be done if generative AI compromises the trust that people have in the site, which is enormously valuable for a place like Wikipedia.
And Wikipedia human editors, I mean, they are a force. they
Yes.
they have a lot of power. And, we do want to say that it looks as of now like Wikipedia has stopped the test and is regrouping somewhat, although it's still interested in finding new ways to use Gen AI AI going forward. So we're going to have to see where that goes.
Absolutely. And we can shift from a site that I love to an app that I hate for our next piece of news, Amber.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jeff, I know you're no fan of Instagram because I keep tagging you there and trying to do Instagram collabs with you, and you're largely ignoring me. So, not a fan, I see. And it looks like Instagram is finally going to let us rearrange the grid displayed on profiles instead of forcing them to be in chronological order. They're also adding the ability to post your profile without it showing up in other users' feeds, as well as streaming songs from Spotify to your Instagram notes. Some of this stuff is kind of cool, actually.
Absolutely. And I think there'll be some compelling uses for that grid management stuff, which is they've been in talks about for ages. So it's nice to see it finally happen. But I'll also note that this is a great example of, to me, how disconnected the Instagram experience is from one section of the app to another. There's like four pretty fundamentally different areas we're talking about. You've got your grid bio page, which works totally different than your scrolling posts page, which works totally differently than the Instagram stories interface, which is different than the reels. So I'll leave it at that, as I know people love their Instagram, but these are the things. Instagram a bit feels like one of those everything apps from Asia that has not caught on here, in that it's like for social media programs in a trench coat trying to act like they're actually one coherent thing.
Yeah, I would say I'm no fan of the Instagram experience. And second to that, I would also say that I'm also not a willing participant in trying to game the algorithm. They don't pay me to post content. So I'm kind of at the point right now with Instagram that I just accept that I'm not going to get a lot of new growth there, because you have to play a whole different game to be able to make the algorithm happy so your posts are actually seen. And I'm not there for it, Jeff.
No, that's fair.
Also, some big social media news from Brazil, where their Supreme Court has ruled that social media companies can be held accountable for content published by users on their platforms. This is a bit of a new thing, because it's always been that argument that they can't be accountable. So what's happening here?
Yeah, this is actually potentially huge news, as it goes against U.S. laws that social media companies insist are essential to their existence. In fact, Section 230 of the Communications Act in the States, that puts these protections in place where they're not liable, has been called the 26 words that made the internet, because of the chilling effect that liability could have on companies online and its potential impacts on free speech. And this has kind of evolved from protecting internet providers who reasonably shouldn't be held liable for what people using the internet are passing over their connections. But it's also been adopted by social media companies, where it is not nearly as clear, given the influence of algorithms and all that this law should be as strictly adhered to for them. So we'll have to see what happens there.
Yeah, that's going to be definitely a story to watch, a balancing act for sure. We'll have to wait to see what the response is and what effect that will have on the internet and social media in Brazil, which we should say is hugely popular. And speaking of U.S. companies who are feeling the heat overseas, it looks like the Danish government is scrapping Microsoft Office and Windows.
Yeah, it sure does. And there's more examples than that. I just saw the German state of Schleswig-Holstein is also ditching its Microsoft products. And the motivation here is really around digital sovereignty, basically the ability to be in control of your own data and software. And this is catching hold quite strongly in Europe because of the diminishing trust they have in the United States and its companies. And in fact, the German state's digitalization minister said, quote, "The war in Ukraine revealed our energy dependencies, and now we see there are also digital dependencies." So they're looking at this quite seriously.
Yeah, I've always wondered about this a lot, actually, here in Canada, in terms of our dependencies on a lot of these big U.S. tech companies. So I think that's a question more and more people are asking. And also, I have to give you a shout out, because when you were pronouncing the German state in this story, you did it with such accuracy that I forgot for a second that you actually speak a little German.
Yeah. Yeah. No, was looking forward to pronouncing that correctly.
I love it. Okay, so before we get to the other Mac, we wanted to report on a little piece of geek culture that has some pretty amazing historic Canadian connections. And Jeff, I will say that you're sort of the geeky entertainment guy on the show. I'm always falling behind. So this is an opportunity for you to just go and nerd out.
Absolutely. So the news is that we're going to be getting a Spaceballs sequel in 2027, the wonderful spoof of Star Wars that came out in the late 80s. And Mel Brooks, at age 99, will be reprising his role as Yogurt, which is the movie's parody of Yoda. So, as you said, Canadians played some major roles in the original Spaceballs. Our beloved late John Candy played Barf, the film's Chewbacca, and the now mostly retired Rick Moranis played the evil Dark Helmet. So very cool connection. It meant a lot to me in childhood, and all my friends thought that was just such a great movie and a wonderful spoof. So while neither Rick Moranis nor obviously John Candy, who's passed away, is going to be in the new movie, it's really nice to see a geek classic from my childhood taking its steps into the new millennium.
Okay, so before we move on, I do want to say that I'm not sure I've ever seen Spaceballs, and simultaneously,
For shame.
I know, Chris in our studio is giving me dirty looks right now behind the scenes, but I also have this theory that if you can't respond to this, no problem, but during the 80s when we grew up, most of the movies, they were really geared towards young boys. Like there weren't a lot of movies with female leads. Like if I think back, there's kind of the Star Wars, there's movies I'm thinking there's just a long list of them that didn't seem to have a lot of female characters kind of front and center. Because at the time, Jeff, I don't know if you know this, but us girls were told to go in our room and read the book, Are You There, Margaret? Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, I think was the name of the book.
I do remember that, and you're kind of right. There was not a lot of. I remember the 80s as being so full of cartoons and Vietnam movies and all this stuff that did tend to tilt more towards boys. And it's great actually to see that, we're 40 years later and the amount of content out there where women are taking the lead, not just on camera, but behind the cameras. We've come a long way, and they're certainly participating in their own sort of geek culture stuff too, with the Barbie movie and all this. So yeah, it's exciting to see what can happen over a lifetime of evolution for these different products.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole new world now because I remember when I was younger, like there would always only be one girl. Like I loved the Smurfs, and I mean, I just wanted to be Smurfette because she was the only one in that whole group. I don't know how that happened in that village, but that's for a whole other conversation.